Morning. Good morning. I'm hiding in my bedroom. Let's do that. Oh, I'm spilling coffee. Ha ha ha. And I'm going to lay here and read, I think. We have a busy day today. And I had to kind of get a little crabby in order to get one of these in because my family's like, we need other things to be done. And I'm like, well, then let me just get this done first because it's not optional. It's not optional. I need to get this book available to people. Because somebody said you couldn't even tag or hashtag Tavistock. Oh my gosh. So I woke up like this. Oh my, oh me, oh my. And I kind of want to read comfortably today, like laying down or something. One day I will have my own dedicated space and a little book nook that's functional. So hope you don't mind. Good morning, Lady in Red. Okay, so we're going to dive in. This is such a big chapter. WikiLeaks and the role of corporate media. Let's have a look at one very recent example of media manipulation. Also, our bed broke last night, so I'm laying directly in the hole that we woke up in. And it wasn't from funny business. It's just Murphy at his best, working in our lives. We're talking about getting rid of the bed, and I think it heard, and it said I quit. My bedazzled bed. It was on sale when we got it anyway. WikiLeaks. Period.
Just needed this.
Okay. I don't want your face in my YouTube, though. It was my fault. Love you. Okay. Even though they are, if you scroll back, but it's their little bitty baby faces. But I just saw also under my video. Oh gosh. And it's a pedestal bed, so it has these slats. And they're so hard to get in. And I don't get how they just fall out. But they do wrestle on our bed, and they've started jujitsu. So the wrestling has gotten serious. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, I saw there's an ad under my video. It says I get commission. I know nothing about that, y'all. But it was an interesting book that they tagged. So who should we read next or something? I was like, what? What does that even mean? I don't even know what book that is, but it looks like I've tagged it. So I just wanted to clarify that I don't know what that is. But YouTube, do you? I don't know. I would much rather be in control of those sorts of things if they're going to do it. My little charger. Okay. All right. So WikiLeaks was started up in December of 2006. Wouldn't you say it was rather strange how an alleged upstart leak site was given star-studded attention from corporate media such as the Washington Post, Time Magazine, and what's more, Time Magazine Immediate did a lot more than give credibility to WikiLeaks by giving the audience tips on how best to decipher the site in such a way that seemed eerily familiar to George W. Bush's rhetoric immediately after 9/11. Okay, that whole sentence, like I'm not poorly reading. Okay, wouldn't you say it was rather strange how an alleged upstart leak site was given star-studded attention from corporate media such as the Washington Post, Time Magazine, ? What's more, Time Magazine Immediate did a lot more than give. I'm starting to be upset about this book. Like, it's very important, but you should respect the information you're trying to convey, Daniel, and proofread. Hire an editor. They say when you're proofreading, you've got to, I know, it doesn't even look like an ad. I love that. I have premium too, and it's my hubs is like, "We don't need YouTube Premium." I'm like, "I do. I do. You don't have to use it, I will." So, so bad. Yeah, such a bad run-on sentence. Interesting, interesting. I used to write with one. I got a hold of some of my writing from when I was a teen, early no, teenager, angsty teenager. I made an anthology of my writing, my bad, bad writing, and I went back and read it, and it was just like, "Oh god, maybe nobody will see me throw this away." My dad kept it his whole life after I gave it to him, and, and I'm like, "Oh my." Hopefully, he didn't go peeking through. Yes, that's the thing too. My kids use mine, and then I can see exactly what they're watching and if they're watching something. Um, and it's so crazy how these people make videos for kids. There was a video, my we have a bunny. My one of my kiddos is super into bunnies. He watches bunny videos for how to care for them. He was anyway, it was a time. And he's showing me this video, "Look how cute, mom, and there's baby bunnies," and suddenly in the middle of a video, there's a dude holding a bunny by his ears, swinging it around like this, just a little 15-second clip, if that, just a little blip of animal abuse in the middle of a care for bunnies video, and I was like, "Golly." I reported it, but that's the stuff. If you are not watching like a hawk, YouTube can be a cesspool. All right, let me get into this because we've got a doctor's appointment. We've got to paint. We have to get the supplies to paint. It's going to be a bigger job than we thought. We got a sprayer, and it was such a mess. I already painted my floors. All right. Oh, and this goes into play too. How WikiLeaks suddenly got a boost, and they're like, "Here, you immediately have as a startup, the Washington Post and Time Magazine advertising for you." Same with Nick Shirley, and Candace brought this up yesterday. Um, And if it were just the Minnesota daycare fraud, noticing, as he says he did, that there were no tire tracks or footprints and kids going out to play throughout the day, um, I buy it. But she showed a clip of him infiltrating Brazilian gangs with his stuttering, stammering 23-year-old lily white ass for 48 hours. I don't buy that. And she's like, "That was stupid." And I'm like, "I agree. I had no idea. If I'd have seen that first, I'd have been doubtful about um, his motives because that is clearly an implantation, or he was picked um, to stand in that position and then to go into these places that was already, it was already. See, I didn't wanna wear this shirt yesterday that I was wearing because I slept in it, and I just woke up and I'm like, "I gotta do live." Alright, this is what Time Magazine had to say about it in January of '07, so a year after its launch. By March, more than 1,000,000 leaked documents from governments and corporations in Asia, the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the former Soviet bloc. Wait, wasn't it Julian Assange who did WikiLeaks? I'm like, "'Cause that can get you, um" oh, and he's Mormon. Oh, that's an excellent point. I might comment that. That'd be a good super for Candace. Excellent point. Because it does seem very government implanty if it wasn't involved with the church. Yeah, so if it's Julian, he was already um, an established journalist. So even though I think a lot of what we read is important in this book, there's a lot that, is okay to look at with scrutiny. So by March, more than 1 million leaked documents from blah, 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 Soviet bloc, Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa will be available online in a bold new collective experiment in whistleblowing. That is, of course, as long as you don't accept any of the conspiracy theories brewing that WikiLeaks.org could be a front for the CIA or some other intelligence agency. What makes this whole thing so incomprehensible is that the Time article was written before WikiLeaks' first big leak in March of 2007. Why would Time even mention them if WikiLeaks were 2 months away from their coming out party? Why would they expose themselves in such a risky way unless, of course, they know something we don't? Are we to believe that Time magazine and establishment media would independently praise an alleged anti-establishment leak site, which in the near future will expose all kinds of conspiracy theories, while at the same time telling its audience that these conspiracy theories circulating on the web are all crazy? Just so long as you believe the correct conspiracy theories, you'll be all right, I guess. That's legit. Now read the following from Time magazine. Instead of a couple of academic specialists, WikiLeaks will provide a forum for the entire global community to examine any document relentlessly for credibility, plausibility, veracity, and falsifiability. Its organizers write on the site's FAQ page. They will be able to interpret documents and explain their relevance to the public. If a document is leaked from the Chinese government, the entire Chinese dissident community can freely scrutinize and discuss it. So, does this sound like a public relations propaganda piece written by the boys at Madison Avenue? Sounds like a WikiLeaks how-to guide. Please understand you're being told what to think and how to interpret information. Of course, in order to interpret it correctly, you must have the right mindset. Oh, what if I laid down? Mindset. WikiLeaks needed the official blessing of the leading mainstream corporate media publications. Did you just see up my nose? We're fine. Anyway, thanks for being here. Love you guys. All right. I'm squeaking it in, so I don't even have makeup on. We're going though. Without the public support, this little project, nope. How to guide correctly. You must have the right mindset. WikiLeaks needed the official blessing of the leading mainstream corporate media publications. Without the public support, this little project looked doomed to fail before it even got off the ground. Is that why you had Rupert Murdoch's public relations guy on the board of directors of WikiLeaks? Is that the reason both Time magazine and the Washington Post had to come out with supportive articles about WikiLeaks before anyone knew anything about them? Please understand, mainstream news limits your understanding of the world by what it chooses not to report and ignore. Polling by numbers. In the early 20th century, the words propaganda and war became synonymous with one another. This was no accident. It was all part of the effort to undermine the Judeo-Christian legacy through an abolition of culture. Two men showed how to link the concepts of propaganda and war into one technique. One was Walter Lippmann. One was the most influential of political commentators of his time. It was Lippmann who, in 1922, gave us the concept of stereotype, which was basically a continuation of the Jungian concept of the archetype by other means. Stereotypes can be created and manipulated by the gurus of mass communication and psychological warfare. The idea is not to make the target think too clearly or too profoundly about the images received, but instead to react in a Pavlovian manner to the stimulus it provides. The other was Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew and one of the founders of public opinion manipulation techniques. In Bernays' own words, it was, of course, the astounding success of propaganda during the First World War that opened the eyes of the intelligent few in all departments of life to the possibilities of regimenting the public mind. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Whatever attitude one chooses to take towards this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, our social conduct, or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by a relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million US citizens at the time, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires, which control the public mind, and who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bring and guide the world. During World War I, as a young lad, Bernays served as the on the U.S. Committee on Public Information, CPI, an ingeniously named American propaganda apparatus mobilized by the U.S. government in 1917. It's interesting how all of this originated 10 years after the protocols were set forth. You know? Hi, Ricky. Who else is on with me? This is an informal one. As you can see, I'm laying down. I'm about to sit up. I'm debating it whether I'm going to go get a drink of coffee. I wanted to make sure that I said it and I didn't just read it. That when I was talking about Nick Shirley, Candace brought up that it's improbable he would be able to implant himself with a gang in Brazil. But I have a viewer who's on live with me who said she doesn't want to say much, but because of her Mormon family, they have a lot of missions to Brazil. And I don't know if they're all church missions. And that would make sense. That would be something that would make sense in Nick Shirley's defense. Hi. Hello. Glad to see you. Thanks for being here with me. And we're off. We are governed, our minds are molded, whatever attitudes, dominated masses. Okay. Small number of persons trifling our hands, U.S. millions. Okay. During World War I, as a young lad, Bernays, CPI, I read that, sorry. 1917, that's what stopped me because it brought me back to my first stream playlist of my reading of the protocols. So go see that if you haven't. I understand maybe I'll have to do it. I've never done one before. But Ricky might have shoved me in that direction. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And for me in the chat if you're watching. So by 1917, shortly before the U.S. entered the war, 94% of British working class, an overwhelming majority of those who perished in the battlefields of Europe in the name of their king, had no idea what they were fighting for, other than the distorted image generated by the corporate media of that time that the Germans wanted to kill their king and destroy their country. Every war since then, including the current war on terror, has used identical mass communication propaganda techniques. And if you go back and read or listen to some of those translations, it seems as though everybody gave that narrative that the Germans were out to kill when everything I've heard and I've dug were that the Germans wanted to save Germany. But I digress. The manipulators then played upon this to undermine and distract the grasp of reality governing any given situation. The more complex the problems of a modern industrial society became, the easier it became to bring greater and greater distractions to bear, so that what we ended up with was that absolutely inconsequential opinions of the masses. Oh my goodness, sweet lady. Oh my goodness. You guys. I don't know if that's ever going to get old or whatever. I don't know. Thank you. How sweet. They make you see it too, big green block. I appreciate that. Thank you. boy. All right, I need to focus. So easier to become to bring greater and greater distractions to bear so that we ended up with what was the absolutely inconsequential opinions of masses of people created by skilled manipulators assume the position of scientific fact. Today, public opinion, that's okay. Yes, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I might pass that along. So today, public opinion polls are completely intertwined with current affairs television shows that offer the public ready-made McNews items. I like that. And I'm gonna get coffee. Super informal. Oh, don't spill. Don't spill. I'm not gonna spill. So those McNews items in easy to swallow bite-sized pieces. A scientific survey of what people are said to think about an issue can be produced in less than 24 hours. Much of the polls announced by the world's leading news media groups such as CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, Fox, the New York Times, Washington Post. I'm balancing my coffee on my knee. Newsweek, Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, in fact, are coordinated at the National Opinion Research Center, where, as much of it will amaze most people, and a psychological profile was developed for every nation on Earth. Interesting to you, I've never seen 100% on a poll, and it came out later that Trump needed some kind of nudge into a happier position, so they just gave him that. Like, why would you? That's not even believable. The idea of public opinion is not new, of course. Plato warned against this in his Republic over 2,000 years ago, as did Alexis de Tocqueville on its influence over America in the early 19th century. But until the 1930s, no one thought of using it to sway the masses towards a particular vision of decision making. As Michael Mendocino explains at length, the belief that public opinion can be a detriment of truth is psychologically insane. It precludes the idea of the rational individual mind. Every individual mind contains the divine spark of reason and is thus capable of scientific discovery and understanding the discoveries of others. The individual mind is one of the few things that cannot, therefore, be averaged. Consider at the moment of creative discovery, it is possible, if not probable, that the scientist making the discovery is the only person to hold that opinion about nature, whereas everyone else has a different opinion and no opinion. One can only imagine that a scientifically conducted survey on Kepler's model of the solar system would have been shortly after he published Harmony of the World is 2% for, 48% against, 50% no opinion. Despite its unprovable central thesis of psychoanalytic types, the interpretive survey methodology of the Frankfurt School became dominant in the social sciences and essentially remains so today. In fact, the adoption of these new, supposedly scientific techniques in the 1930s brought about an explosion in public opinion survey use, much of it funded by Madison Avenue. That's because opinions can be easily counted. You can ask a group of people how they feel about something or whether you think that such and such a statement is true. You add the yes and subtract the no, with the larger number becoming the consensus, which apparently represents the opinion of the majority. Thus, America is saying no to drugs is a manufactured consent by the pollsters on behalf of the financial elite, who are, in fact, the world's biggest drug pushers. As I have repeatedly shown in all my books, I wonder what another one is. I know he did the true story of the Bilderbergs. But no matter how many people agree or disagree with something, it doesn't make it true. After studying American polling numbers, Emery and Trist have come to a conclusion that people have that people behave according to consensus. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. The masses of great unwashed are so directed and influenced by the polls that they wouldn't dare break this social contract. They must do what others perceive that they should do. To do otherwise would cause physical pain. They concluded that polls give meaning to their lives. After World War II, Paul Lazarsfeld, the director of the Bureau of Applied Social Research at Columbia University, and who especially pioneered the use of surveys to psychoanalyze American voting behavior. And by 1952 presidential election, along with Madison Avenue advertising agencies, were firmly in control of Dwight Eisenhower's campaign, utilizing Paul Lazarsfeld. I'm sorry, I hate that. That's embarrassing. His work. The power of television and its hypnotic influence on the electorate became a reality in 1952 elections. Batten, Barton, Durstein, and Osborne, the fabled BBD&O ad agency, designed Ike's campaign appearances entirely for the TV cameras. And as carefully as Hitler's Nuremberg rallies, 1-minute spot advertisements were pioneered to cater to the survey-determined needs of the voters. Quote, this snowball was not stopped rolling since, has not. The entire development of television and advertising in the 1950s and 60s was pioneered by men and women who were trained in the Frankfurt School of Technologies and Mass Alienation. So Frank Stanton went directly from the radio project to become the single most important leader of modern television. The whole idea behind this type of social brainwashing is to better understand the electorate's response to policy dictates of the elite. If you want people to believe something, then all you have to do is get a poll taken that says that it is so and get it publicized, preferably on the television. The speaker is Hal Becker of the Futures Group. We are elites test cases to be nudged and prodded in the right direction, all along making us believe that our decisions are based on our solid understanding of the body politics around us. Whereas in reality, we are targeted population groups whose messages are adjusted to the apparent needs of the masses. The results of the carefully constructed polls feed back to the population through, hang on a second. All right. Happy day. Good to see you. I think we're 30 minutes steep. And this part of the chapter is a little easier to digest than the last part because they had to name and produce the credentials of all these people that they were naming as the influencers, the behind-the-scene influencers. I love that you guys are stoked to see each other here. What a community we're building. Anyway. Oh, yeah. So, fed back to the population through the mass media, provide the basis for shaping opinion. This process is created at Tavistock and described in one of the Tavistock manuals as the message reaching the sense organs of persons to be influenced. It was the juggernaut that transformed most Americans who had never heard of Saddam Hussein and could never dream of showing you Iraq on a map into a vile demonstration of hatred for an unknown enemy who, we were told, wanted to kill our president and exterminate us as a country. Sound familiar? How could this be, you ask? Because these images of Saddam, world enemy number one, because an image of evil through the power of television, and that, I saw his face over and over and over and over and over again. Just as Hitler and Stalin visually represented evil, how about a little test? Who, in your opinion, is the enemy today? The Chinese, the Korean, Putin, or is it your fellow man? We have become the enemy, the source of destruction of society, if you believe the evil Freud. Not all men are worthy of love. That's a quote. The sinister environmentalist movement with their anti-human view of man explicitly states this very fact in the degenerate propaganda. Save the little animals, kill the people. I think white men are probably the target. I'm so worried for my boys, because hopefully they can't get a scholarship when they want to go to college. If they want to, I will discourage them from going to college unless they want to be lawyers or doctors. I'm going to say go to a trade school, or we're going to build a business and they can participate and find their niche that way. Anyway, yep. Still, we don't seem to get it. Why? Because the methodology of polling hasn't changed since its inception. Complicated issues are reduced to a simple set of choices. Saddam Hussein is a bad man. Do you agree? However, what is this assertion based on? On whose vision? How do you define badness? From the perspective of Iraq's population, the invading U.S. troops were bad and Saddam was good. These types of questions fit directly into the profile of Western Europe and North America. Keep it simple, stupid. We're talking about Freudian mass psychology and its appeal to infantilists' animal-like behavior, the touchy-feely thing, designed to bypass creative reasoning powers of every individual, informed by moral judgment and the eternal search for universal truth. In fact, when it comes to television, the issue of truth has never, in fact, been an issue. Television is not about the truth. It's about creating reality. It does not matter one bit whether the images you see on television are real or copied and pasted from past events. And they keep doing that. They're like, look at this protest is happening right now in Boston, and they're showing 2021 protests. Because people believe them to be real, immediate, and thus true. For example, in March 2010, earthquake in Japan, mass media showed images of empty supermarket shelves, stating brazenly that Japan was undergoing the worst water rationing since World War II. However, the images of empty shelves were taken from stock photography and had little to do with the earthquake or a lack of bottled water. In this way, reality, as conveyed by the nightly news, obliterates truth every night. Emery and Trist indicated that the more a person watches television, the less he understands. The more he accepts, the more he becomes dissociated from his own thought process. Television is much more magical than any other consumer product, except for cell phones. Crap. I wanted to say that and just jump right back in. Because it makes things normal. It packages and homogenizes fragmentary aspects of reality, and that has been further condensed in our cell phones. It constructs an acceptable reality, the myth, out of largely unacceptable ingredients. To confront the myth would be to admit that one was ineffective, isolated, and incompatible. Television images, become and is the truth. In this manner, and I think that's why people are so confused by what's happening with Candace, because she's being methodical. She is going through every little slice and piece of information. And they're like, oh, it's a cult because they're focusing on this. No, we just have a larger attention span and we're able to think critically. And she is, same with Tucker, a lot. I love him. He's thoughtful. He's delving. But what Candace is doing specifically with this investigation is she's drawing our attention back into the long thought form, out of the fast-paced nightly 30-second scroll jobs we're doing. Yeah, exactly. There's something happened when you become up. Somebody said she's a mom. She ain't missing nothing. That's the thing. She's also pissed. And something about how anger can be your, I don't want to say leverage, but like your best asset. Yes, exactly. But if you're here, then you're not one of those people. That's right. Exactly. Even, and like for a while there, she was talking about Trump in a way that I didn't align with. I do now. I mean, I as a lifelong Democrat, I voted for him and lost friends and family over it, and then I was stoked over everything he had done, and then he started flipping, and, seemingly he was beholden to somebody other than us, and that's continued, but I'm at this point, I'm like, "Wait and see." I'm bummed, I'm disappointed, I'm irritated that he's freaking beholden to somebody else other than our country, but I'm like, "Let's wait and let's see," I guess. Anyway, in this manner, and maybe I've read part of this before, but in this manner, the nightly stories of your favorite television news show serve to reinforce your opinion of what the world around you looks like and smells like. And what is that opinion? That we live in a world of unspeakable violence and perversion, that human beings are degrading and violent creatures who murder, grape, destroy, and spread hatred everywhere they go in the name of whatever ism happens to be in vogue at the moment. And the next one is idiots speak. Do you see it? Ooh, mirrored. I'm still hopeful too. I'm hopeful. You can't not be in, not just fall into a deep depression or think the world's ending. Anyway, idiots speak. Have you ever paid attention to the level of language used in newscasts? You haven't, have you? In fact, every newscast in the Western world follows the same language pattern. This immediately reminds me of Jasmine Crockett and Kamala because they dumbed down. Oh, so did Clinton. She did that shit too. I just saw a soundbite I hadn't seen in a while, and I was like, "Oh my god, that is so embarrassing." How she was trying to speak like an old black Southern slave survivor or something. All right, simple verbs, oodles of nouns, and very few long sentences. Short sentences, simple vocabulary, in other words, sound bites. President won't run for re-election, says the newsreader. Details in half an hour. This too is deliberate. Through language, its beauty and complexity, man communicates the ideas and principles of his culture from one generation to the next. The language of television is Aristotelian. Through the mere naming of objects as a fixed counted universe, man, dog, criminal, president, car, bomb, economy, bad, good. There's no creative thought going on, no attempt to engage the mind. And they're always like black man, white man, unless that narrative doesn't push unless it's not aligned with pushing a narrative, they're always going to describe people as such when there's much more that they can be using at Kimmel. Yeah, the hot sauce in her purse. Get real. The way she was so indignant when they asked her about Pizzagate, that would be the first question on my mind if I ever had to sit down with Hillary Clinton. And she's like, "I did not think that was going to come up." Well, you shoulda, lady, because that's all we could talk about. All right. There's no creative thought going on, no attempt to engage the mind, merely to imprint an image of how in a person's brain. And that's what you call brainwashing. However, brainwashing by television is not an overnight thing. Rather, it is an accumulative effect over a long period of time that succeeds in changing the paradigm of our society. Don't believe me? Look around and think back a generation. The language of television news has its roots in linguistic work during World War II as part of H.G. Wells' Ultimate Revolution, the elimination of all national languages in favor of basic English. Future world language, which had a vocabulary of only 850 words. This degenerate concept was created by a British linguistic, C.K. Ogden. Some people in the highest levels of the British oligarchy, including Churchill, saw the potential brainwashing value in what Ogden had done. By using basic coupled with the mass media, a large number of people could be given a simple message without complicated thoughts getting in the way. In Wells' future world, the English most speak and write today. The English most spoken and written today is very different from the English of Shakespeare. And his English is not very good in this stupid book. I'm literally, the English most speak and write today. Stop it. I can't see, it's that kind of stuff that gets me discouraged on. Anyway, I'm giving this book about a 6 out of 10, and not for its content, for its English. And it's interesting what can stand in the way of a message being received. Like, you mess up your spelling or your sentence structure, and I don't want to hear it anymore. So Shakespeare, wait, the English the English that most speak today and write today is very different from the English of Shakespeare, Addison, Bunyan, or Shaw. It has shed the last traces of such archaic elaborations as the subjunctive mood. I don't know what was missing there, the commas, or maybe I just had to think about it further. That is proper English. Yeah, I had a brain fart there, and I was so judgy at the writer. Anyway, my bad. In ancient Greece, in Plato's Menodialogue, Socrates brings out the innate genius in the slave boy by encouraging him to solve the problem of doubting the square. He thus proves that slavery is unjust by showing the creative nature of the human species. Plato's pro-imperial opponent, Aristotle, assuming that man has no soul, declared that nature has destined some to be slaves and has made others to be masters. Tavistock knows that ideas are more powerful than any standing army. To get people to accept their imperial ideas, Tavistock seeks to control the way people think, especially science, the area where human powers of hypothesis and creative reason become a force for improvement in the other order of nature. If you can control how we think, you can control how we respond to events around us, no matter what the events might be. So, and I'll bring up another point. If I read poorly, it might make you lose interest. So that's my bad. And I hope I'm not doing you a disservice. Yeah, that's true. I appreciate that, because it is it's a lot to digest. Hi guys. Amazing. So this process is called paradigm shift, an overturning of existing sets of assumptions about society. Historically, the fight to preserve language is the cornerstone of nation-state republics. Goes back to Italian playwright Dante Alighieri. As sociologist Dennis Speed writes on the pages of Fidelio magazine, it is important to identify the fact that the people of the Italian Renaissance spoke a language that did not exist 200 years earlier, but was invented by poet Dante Alighieri. Dante, who lived from 1250 to the early 1300s, struggled to invent a language that could resurrect the most powerful ideas of human thought, even if his own era should ultimately commit sewer slide. This sewer slide, in fact, did occur through the banking collapse caused by the Bardi and Peruzzi families. Without Dante's gift of the Italian language, which was shaped by him from over 1,000 local dialects, there could not have occurred the Renaissance. Dante's Divine Comedy refined the canto form of sung poetry. His followers, Francesco Petrarca, where is it? There it is, Petrarca, sought to advance language further with the invention of the sonetto or sonnet. But Petrarca's friend, Giovanni Boccaccione, there's another one. Where am I? Here we are. Boccaccione was assigned by Petrarca to a different project called the Decameron. The Decameron was written in order to prevent the whole of Italian society from sinking into cultural pessimism and dying out during the Black Death of the 1340s and latter. It consists of satirical studies, many quite risque, which recount the tragedy of Europe's sewer slide in a way designed to make people laugh at themselves and repeat the stories, and hopefully not the behavior which had destroyed them. Thus, they would learn Dante's Italian. Geoffrey Chaucer attended a lecture by Boccaccio on Dante in 1375. Lord, help me pull it together. And got the idea to do the same thing in English. Thus was born the Canterbury Tales, which recount the hilarious tales told on a religious pilgrimage to the Church of Canterbury. The English, being every bit as licentious as the Italians, also repeated the stories and thus learned how to speak English. Later, Shakespeare imported the sonnet of Petrarca into English. Your literate English is in large measure Italian, a sort of grandson of Dante's Italian. Later, the Christian humanist figure Erasmus of Rotterdam inspired his student Francois Rabelais to do for France what was done by Boccaccio for Italy, and Chaucer for English. My goodness, these names are messing me up. Thus was born the astounding character Gargantua with it, the French language. And in Spanish, we have the great example of Don Quixote. In this way, languages created by poets lifted the populations that had been dominated by ignorance and thereby ruled over. In fact, the languages created the nations, not the other way around. Okay. A bit more. I may finish chapter 5 today. I don't know, though. Actually not. There's still a bunch. What a big old chapter. There's still this much left in chapter 5, and we're 3 hours deep in just chapter 5. So, war across generational divide. People in their 60s are called the baby boom generation. Let me catch up. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me grace on my mistakes. They are extra long. All right, people. Nope. The values common to the baby boomer generation are synonymous with the paradigm shift in society, beginning with the 1960s. That policy change is deindustrialization of America. Deindustrialization society is a no-future society because any self-respecting nation state can only be truly independent if it can provide welfare for its citizens. How are the people who run the world able to impose this deindustrialization on society? Think about the profile of the American population. The generation with the strongest set of moral values in American history is the generation that fought in World War II. They were born before the advent of television. They were the hardest generation to brainwash. Their children, the baby boomers, became the targets of the brainwashers. In fact, with the advent of television, the baby boomers have spent their entire lives being brainwashed. Think back to the goal of brainwashers, to make each succeeding generation more infantile, more animal-like, more immoral, thus easier to control. The world we are a part of today is more conventional, less concerned, more sensationalist, and more spiteful. The impetus of modern thought has been towards reducing the sphere of individual moral responsibility. Human behavior is seen increasingly as the product of impersonal forces. And how could it be different? Our parents were brought up on a healthy dose of television diet. We were also reared by television. Our children are educated through mainstream TV. Not mine. Mainstream TV. In other words, 3 successive generations subjected to television, brainwashing, have no conscious memory of anything different. Think about it. People have never quite digested television. The mystique, which should grow stale, grows stronger. Our moral compass has shifted to such an extent that we make celebrities not only of the men who cause the events, but of the men who act them out on screen, who lip sync old song for hand-picked studio audiences, and for those out-of-work actors who sell cheap trinkets, yogurts, and deodorants during commercial breaks of old film reruns. And once our moral compass shifted, something happened to us and with us. The TV set became the moralizer and began telling people what to do. Suddenly, the behavior of the children, the drugs, the sex, the antisocial behavior doesn't seem as shocking as it all once did. It became easier to rationalize it. It explains it away with the help of the messages contained in television and programming. And when the adults are infantile already, it is more easy to accept the infantilism and their children. Yes. Yes. And I was reading, and I want to read in a playlist like this, Voodoo Histories by David Aronovich. It's such a good one. And he breaks up the Trotskyites and the interesting to what we were made to read. So culture warfare. Now let's look at the people who create the idea content of the brainwashing. Most of them are in their approximate age range of 35 to 45. In other words, the programmers themselves were weaned on television since birth. So don't look for a scenario where 3 90-year-old geezers sat in a dark room holding hands, staring at a crystal ball, planning the world's future. It doesn't work that way. It's more like a group of infantile jerks in sneakers and goofy haircuts sitting around in an air-conditioned room overlooking the Big Apple, kicking around ideas for next year's major shows. Yeah, and just like how technology exponentially gets better because the new technology is used to make the new technology, the newly brainwashed gets to make the brainwashing material. That's why shit's so weird. All right. Once they come up with the ideas, they pass it on to other groups of infantile jerks called script writers, who will put these ideas into simple dialogues full of nouns and simple words. Verbs. That product will then be placed in the hands of producers and directors for actual production. This is done the world over, from the United States to Canada and Western Europe. Even thousand-year-old Oriental cultures, such as the Japanese, have their own versions of all major and minor U.S. hit situation comedies adapted to their own market. Once the shows are designed and the scripts are written, the actual brainwashing messages are inserted after the fact. The jerky screenwriters and brainstormers rely on experts from Tavistock and Frankfurt School who work as advisors on most programs. For example, there can be no discussion of homosexuals without first deferring to the Gay Rights Task Force, who makes sure that the issue is being dealt with sensitively. Similarly, all children's shows, and that includes all Disney programming, employ child psychiatrists who help shape the content. Furthermore, the entire environmental idiocy is scripted into television shows, films, and into the news. I posted it on TikTok, and it was a clip from Transformers where they're literally telling children the only safe people you can interact with are non-binary. Maybe I'll upload that as a short later. We'll see. It's going to be busy. That's why I was on early today. So, take, for example, a 2008 Hollywood science fiction thriller, The Happening, starring Mark Wahlberg, that follows a man, his wife, and his best friend, along with his friend's daughter, as they try to escape from an inexplicable natural disaster. The plot revolves around a mysterious neurotoxin that causes anyone exposed to it to commit sewer slide. The message is easily discernible. People are the enemy of nature, and planet Earth is rebelling against us, ruthlessly killing the enemy. Those who protest and are opposed to such idiocy are shunned and scorned by their coworkers, friends, and family. If you weren't completely won over, you became tolerant, or at the very least, you kept your mouth shut as the lonely voice of reason. Isn't that right? The New York Hollywood social community of creative people function in what brainwashers call a leaderless group. They are unaware of the real outside forces that control them, especially unaware of their own brainwashing by 30 to 40 years of television viewing. They believe themselves free to create, but they can lawfully only produce banalities. Ultimately, these creators of our television programming turn to their own brainwashing experiences and values for their creative inspiration. When one producer was asked how he determined what was in his shows, he replied, "I think of myself as the audience. If it pleases me, I always think that it's going to please the audience. Indeed, it does. How many people who watch television are aware that what they see on the boob tube reflects the morals and conscience of the people who make them happen? Let's have a look at the two most popular television shows in Spain to have, and they're going to give me Spanish names, to have garnered as much attention on the past decade as Operación Triunfo y Gran Hermano, Big Brother. Why are they so popular? One might suspect the content itself a startling new idea, but the reason might also be social acceptability or even just plain hype. I remember watching Big Brother and thinking how creepy and sinister it was. Each of these programs, with their claims of righteous generosity, even-handedness, and ratings measured fun, contains no argument and presents no compelling reason why the studio audience, the show's participants, and all those simple folks watching at home shouldn't be locked up in perpetuity. By any standard, Operación Triunfo is an impressive achievement by cultural prototype for the gullible and the sick. Can I show it to you? How would you Operación Triunfo? Anyway, the participants are better looking, slicker, more calculating, more diabolical, more astute in optimum crowd manipulation than their predecessors. The triumphantly bizarre television celebrity moment of puerile distortionism. Hi.
Make myself a hot pocket.
Okay. Just a few more minutes. I think I'm going to do 1.5 more pages and I'll be with you. I love you. Distortionism, puerile distortionism. So television, in fact, has given status to the celebrity, which few real men attain. And what is a celebrity if not the ultimate human pseudo-event, fabricated on purpose to satisfy our exaggerated expectations of human greatness? This is the ultimate success story of the 21st century and its pursuit of illusion. A new mold of human emptiness has been made so that marketable human models, modern heroes, could be mass-produced to satisfy the market and without any hitches. Miss Amanda's words, not mine. What are you talking about? They have different generations. Oh, all right. Television, in fact, has given I read that. This world we have been peering into is somehow beyond good and evil. It's a world of sentimentality, of makeovers, of people who are willing to shed a tear just before a commercial break and then return with uplifting visions of a life with family by show's end. It is a world of post-baby boom, post-paradigm shift, and post-reality. It is a world of us versus them, of our parents' generation against our generation, and the divide could not have been greater than it is today. Bridging the two generational value structures was the television set in your living room. And what did it tell you? To compromise, to learn to speak to each other. It provided you with solace as your world collapsed and changed. Then there's Big Brother. There are those who argue that each show is a small morality play, with the audience booing the villain and supporting the good guests. The show insisted on as much. The tone, a throwback to the time-tested model of the past, it's almost always conspiratorial. The nincompoops are more self-righteous, more vehement, and more paranoid. Instead of saying indefensible things and trusting that the viewer will love him anyway, they explain their hardship and plead their case, which is a very unreasonable thing to do with an abjectly stupid audience. I find it disturbing to see people allowing themselves to be used like Kleenex for shallow ends. Initial triumphalism, giving way to grudgy defeatism, is today's world as seen through the prismatic binoculars of an intrusively globalized, therapeuticized, and Coca-Cola-ized American morality. Attacking the entertainment of a therapeutic culture is a way of attacking its values. Publicly over achievement, revelation over restraint. No, publicity over achievement, revelation over restraint, honesty over decency, victimhood over personal responsibility, confrontation over civility, psychology over morality. According to a well-informed source at TVE, the more intellectual you make the show, the more the viewers yawn and go away. I have seen that in play on my channel. The reason I have so many followers is because of or subscribers, is because of my Erica Kirk shorts. I've got like 4 of them that do really well. Nobody wants to stick with me here. So I really appreciate you guys for being here. You are my honest lot that that's here for the truth. And people were saying I was like up there with Baron and Candace and Coach Colin. I'm like, I'm not doing that kind of stuff though. And because I've got a few shorts that put me in front of a lot of eyeballs, I'm like, I need to bring something of value and maybe I can help people get out of the loop we've found ourselves in because of the content of this book. So that's the goal. And if you guys are here to support me with that, then yeah, I know. And I'm so glad that you're here, but I love that you're committed to broadening your understanding. And like I had said before, unless you've watched everything I put out, then maybe you hadn't heard it. Since I know Candace has mentioned the protocols before, but she couldn't dare maintain what she has now and then read them out loud on the air. So that's what I feel like. If I'm being pulled into the conversation, I'm going to bring something that can't be talked about by those who have millions of followers or subscribers. So yeah. Yep. And I'm super interested in that because Charlie is what helped me step outside of the programming I had been inundated in and steeped in. So I owe him my awakening and that they're going to lie to us. And especially with what happened with 9/11, people just forgot because they were distracted by other things. A constant, just like they did with Saddam Hussein, they did over and over again. I saw so many of the face, so many pictures and blips and sound bites of the face of Osama bin Laden. We are Charlie Kirk. I don't know if you can see. Oh, wait. Nope. There it is. Goonies and Charlie Kirk repping. Oh, man. Where was I? Okay. Did I just turn the page? But then we already know that. Why should we be surprised? In this society, shame is fame and sin is an instrument of upward mobility. And upward mobility is the modern way. In Webster's English Dictionary, fame is defined as the frenzy of renown. The frenzied, meaning people who are intoxicated by synthetic significance, are complicit in this farce. 40 years ago in his book, The Image, Daniel Boorstin argued that the graphic revolution in television has severed fame from greatness, which generally required a gestation period in which great deeds were performed. This severance hastened the decay of fame into mere notoriety, which is very plastic and very perishable. The doctrine of celebrity, triumphalism, is inherently inclusive. It proceeds from the assumption that everyone already loves the wealthy and the pseudo-famous. Most pseudo-celebrities seem to have understood that their life is a constant conjuring trick. There is an incurable precariousness to the position as they try to live off derivative dignity from an anachronistic concept while cultivating the royalism of a democratic age. Celebrity. That I'm echoing. That assumption is what makes the celebrity circus so creepy. The pseudo-famous, that's weird that I just started hearing my own voice. The pseudo-famous know that they owe their careers to the celebrity industry, know that their tabloid sensibility is well suited to a tabloid culture, know that the whole enterprise is built on bad faith or satanic rituals. Still, the ratings continue to climb. We have always had a voyeuristic streak. Ours has always been a culture of gawkers. We went to see the bearded lady and the albino man when the circus came to town, but now we want to be a part of the circus. The bearded lady and the albino man rolled into one, and it may be just the right thing for the current moment, in which the sleazy patter of tabloid culture has given way to a jittery onslaught of bearded midgets and their 6-foot-tall offspring, and guaranteed to appeal to the intellectually challenged, reason being highly optional. The abnormal is normal, and deviancy will be back right after this commercial. Disturbing as I find the anachronism of the variety shows, I'm even more distressed by their pervasive disingenuousness. The hosts and the guests alike omit facts, misuse words, and seem unwilling to admit the consequences of their own actions. I've never seen anything more grotesquely inadequate in a way of confession. Mm-hmm. As Maureen Dowd writes in the New York Times, confession, quote, confession began in a small dark box with a screen separating priest from penitent. It is still in a small dark box, and there is still a screen, but this one is in everyone's living room. In the new medium of confession, people violate their own privacy, spilling their guts, not for absolution, but for syndication. In fact, we are living in a world where conspicuousness passes for distinction, and the society column has become the roll of fame. Andre Malraux believed that the third millennium must be the age of religion. I would say rather, it must be the age in which we finally grow out of our need for religion. But to cease to believe in our gods is not the same thing as commencing to believe in nothing. To believe, we must take on the richness of man, his existential density, immorality, eternity, and not the sectarian, simplistic, visceral millenarianism. Memory saves people from oblivion. The inherent danger, however, is that the prerequisite is lacking. Curiosity deriving from the respect for deeply alien cultures. That is not the main reason of what's happening today, but it is a crucial lesson. The public debate increasingly is in the hands of the mentally retarded. The denigration has played a large role in a paradigm shift of our society. What is that shift again? Man is to be told that he is a beast so that he might be controlled like one. The brainwashers of Tavistock adopted a bestial view that the human mind is simply a blank slate, which avoids pain and seeks pleasure. It was from this standpoint that the Tavistock Institute developed its peculiar techniques for creating mass psychology. I'm stopping there. Television's hidden messages. I only have, another hour. I may come on tonight and finish this chapter so we can move on tomorrow. Thank you, Miss Lobster, Mr. Ricky. You guys and your super chats are blowing my mind. I am so appreciative. I got to run though. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening and for thinking further than most people will. We'll talk to you soon. Maybe I'll see you tonight. Bye.